All right, so welcome to Alabama State Reporting Child Count Validation and Submission. Today we're going to talk about instruction and having some demonstration on looking at your student data that needs to be corrected. We're going to talk about what data that is, how do you correct it. It's a similar process that what you had in the past when you worked at SETS. We're going to look at the child count validation reports. View the validation report error logs, talk about other processes that you'll go through to make sure that that data is ready for the October 1st snapshot and submission approval. As I said, to facilitate in this process, we do have some data cleanup reports. The first thing that I'm going to walk you through is actually how you can access these reports and upload these reports into your database. So starting with this slide, we actually have a slide that tells you how to upload a report definition. The report definition is attached to the invitation for this meeting. It is also stored in the Special Programs Alabama office, our webinar where we store all of our collateral for you. So let me walk through the steps really quick, and then I'm actually going to demonstrate how this works. First of all, as we work through 99.9% of what we're going to talk about in terms of just doing some initial data cleanup, I'm going to want you to be logged in as an admin. There are some utilities and some capabilities that we taught you all when you were with us this spring. You do need to be logged in as an admin in order to be able to utilize those features and functionalities. So first of all, remember you're logging in as an admin, going through that external URL, entering your admin account and your password, or if you are in a security group that allows you to assume the system admin role, you would be able to do it from that perspective as well. You would navigate to your standard report area. There is a utility button, and there is a menu option underneath it that allows you to upload report definitions. When you click on upload report definitions, it brings you to a screen that asks you, what do you want to upload? I recommend that you create a new category name called data cleanup. This will just keep your reports much more organized. So as you're going through them, you're not having to search through different categories. If you do not enter a category name, by default, any uploaded report definition is going to go into an imported report folder. You want to make sure that you retain those security group associations because we've already preset them so that they are available to the folks who are going to be working on child count verification. When you click select, you would be uploading that file definition, which I have attached to the report, or which is out in our office webinar space, and upload it. So it would look similar to this. And Gail, what environment did you want me to work in?
Demo has the latest.
You got it.
And the report definitions in the coming release will be under diagnostic reports category.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to put it somewhere else, just a little bit, just to kind of differentiate them. Yeah. All right.
Yep, makes sense.
Yep. So we got a data diva here. Cool. All right. I'm going to go to utilities, and I'm going to upload my report definitions. Now, I've already taken the report definitions and placed them on my hard drive. So all I need to do is come over here, go all the way down to the bottom and select new category. I'm going to retain those security group associations. I'm going to select my file. The file that I've attached is called Data Cleanup Child Count. Click Upload. And there was a couple of them that were duplicates because we've been out here playing. So you wouldn't see that. Click OK. And now I have some reports out here. A couple of the other ones are over here in the diagnostic reports, because those are the ones that are going to be included in the model release on Friday. All right, so uploading a report definition. All right, the reason I wanted to start with report definitions is because these specific reports that we have added to the model focus on really talking about and helping you identify integration Idts. You know, we touched on integration Idts when we first saw you late back in the spring in our integration workshops. But between then and now, you've probably heard a lot about integration Idts. I'm going to kind of take us back to day one and really talk about what an integration Idt is, because it's really important. An integration Idt is an internal number that links the student record and the demographic data that is over on the SIS side, and it links it to the record that's been created on the special program side. And it uses this integration Idt, or this identifier, to match the data, so that when the continuous integration is running between the two, it knows that these two records are the same record, okay? So we call that continuous integration. And it gets built the first time the student demographic record is sent from the student information system from SIS over to special programs. It says, I'm sending you this record from SIS. It creates the profile for that student and populates the demographic data for the student, the contact information for the student, and it links them together by an integration Idt. And that's how we know it's linked. So that anytime something changes on the SIS side, it matches up against that integration Idt on the special program side. Now, it's very important, because what it looks at when it's authenticating or syncing against each other is it says, okay, I have two records that have the same integration Idt, okay? And is the student ID the same? Is the first name and the last name the same? So as it looks at the records, it says, I have this student ID. I'm going to go over to special programs and make sure I have that same student ID. Okay, if the student IDs match, do the first and the last name match? Okay, if that's great, does the integration Idt match? And if it doesn't pass the test on all of those, it says, I'm not going to match it up. And that is by design. That is the internal authentication process that we go through to make sure that data from one student isn't overriding the wrong student. That works really great when everything is in alignment. But if they're not in alignment and any one of those fields do not match or authenticate against each other, it rejects the rows. Okay, and think about this, it rejects the rows, and it also means that as the row is rejected coming in, if anything about that student changes that needs to go back to SIS, it's not going to send it back the other way. So that explains sometimes why you might not get an alert on one side to another. Or if you have data that's over on the special program side, that's not getting correct data coming in from SIS. It's all about that integration Idt. So how did it happen? Okay, this is a issue that can face any district. So I want to talk about the 4 ways that this can happen just on a yearly annual basis. The first thing that will create a record where there's no connection to SIS is if you manually add a student in special programs, okay? All of your students are enrolled in SIS. And in order for you to work with that student, they have to come over via integration into your general table. From your general table, you import them into your student table. We know that that took some time this year. We understand the issue with the provisional IDs. We understand waiting for the state IDs. And in some cases, as you all went live and you knew that you had new little ones, for sure that you needed to start doing some referrals and some evaluations, some of those were just manually added into special programs. So here's kind of the thought process. All students must come in from SIS, okay? Regardless of age, they have to come in through SIS because that is the ALSDE policy. So not only is it a policy, but if you don't do it that way, what happens is you have kids in special programs that are not synchronized against any kind of data over in SIS because there is no record in SIS, okay? So very, very important thing. The second thing that happened because kind of the same kind of an issue. We had a lot of students that were being moved between other districts in Alabama. The student transfer envelopes, in many cases, were sent, sometimes even before they were requested. We know that we had an issue with the transfer notification report, which wasn't always being received with the transferred district information in it. And we believe that there were also some anomalies in actually how some of the SIS processes were actually completed over in SIS. So what we saw as a result of that is that districts were receiving transfer envelopes before the student had made its way through SIS. And once again, it was the same kind of thing. We had kids that were enrolled with provisional ID, and then they needed to stay over on the SIS side until the state ID issues could be resolved. We started very early in the game, maybe a little earlier than some of the other applications, in blocking your provisional IDs. And by that, I mean is once we saw that the integration was pulling in provisional IDs that weren't the correct student ID, we stopped it immediately so that downstream, we wouldn't have so many row rejections. Before we could do that, we already had some slip through. So and they already had documents created on them. So we have a couple things. We have kids that were getting transfer envelopes imported into their profile to bring that historical data over before their enrollment process was completed in SIS. What did that do? It meant that we had profiles and documents and data over in special programs. You guys could work on those kiddos, but guess what? They're not integrated with SIS. So they didn't have an integration IDT. The third way is during the migration process, we migrated your inactive students, okay? Because we migrated over 5 years of data. And once a student is archived and inactive and has historical data, he really doesn't have a record to match up to in SIS because the student wasn't imported in during the migration and he's not an active student in SIS. And that by nature is fine. The problem is if you had a student who was in your archives, he had been deactivated, and then you wanted to reactivate him because he re-enrolled. And if he got reactivated before the SIS enrollment record came over, then we also had that disconnect of students with no integration IDT. Okay. Last but not least, we also had kids that came over in the migration that we thought were coming back to school this year, and they didn't. So they were no-shows. And so they never had a record to match up against over on the SIS side because they either withdrew in the spring, or they had an active record and then just never showed up for the school year. So reasons that we might have those. All right, I talked a little bit about this earlier when we were doing the report demonstration. Once again, you're going to be kind of walking through this next set of instructions with me, kind of through the lens of being the system administrator, using the admin account and password as we look at a couple things. All right, so the first thing that I want to say is we want to talk about how do you resolve missing integration IDTs. And that's important because as part of the child count, in order for a student to be part of the child count submission and to not be on the warning report, it has to have an integration IDT. Because if it doesn't have an integration IDT, it doesn't have a record to link back to over on the SIS side. So there's no submission information or snapshot information it can be linked to. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of the reports. If you are, and I do want to say that I kind of randomly this morning have been popping in and out of some of your districts, kind of checking on some of your data. You may even seen for some of you that I've already uploaded a report folder for you because I was checking some of your data. And I want to tell you that in the past, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, the SIS team and all of the PowerSchool teams have been running triage on the back end to programmatically fix as much of the data as we possibly could that was created by the provisional IDs and the state ID issue. So I am seeing much less data that needs to be fixed in this area than I saw a week ago. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over into the database. And we're going to talk about this first report, students with missing integration IDs. And I'm over in demo, Gail, so not sure what, you know. So you have some out here, perfect. So this report, students with missing integration IDTs, let's talk about what it's showing us. It's showing us the local ID that is assigned to the student, as well as the state ID that should be assigned to the student. In Alabama, they should match, shouldn't they? So this state ID should be matching this state ID. You'll see in the error reports, though, if for whatever reason this state ID is missing, you will also have the option to make sure and match it up against the correct state ID. We brought in the first name, last name, the grade, just so you could see the student. We also brought some enrollment information over because I think it's important when you're looking at integration IDTs to have some sense of why your data looks this way. Now, if you're looking at your own data, it really is going to tell you a much different story than if you're looking at demo data. But in this case, I can see that Maggie Smith did enroll at the beginning of the school year. So that indicates to me that that really should be an active student, okay, if I have an enrollment date. I can see if the student had an enrollment end date or exit reason, but the reality is that if I have a student that's missing an integration IDT, all of this data that's coming over from SIS isn't in this particular record anyway, because it quit integrating with each other. So it's this integration IDT that is missing. And because I can see that there was a profile modified on, I can just look at this record and say, oh, these kids don't have an integration IDT because they were manually added to the database, okay? So just kind of, you're going to see different things as you look at your reports. As I said, I kind of talked about the 4 ways that you would end up not having one. Demo database, I don't have the capability to reproduce it exactly the way we did if we're looking at your own data. So remember, if I'm looking at this data on a report, I can pop over to any one of my students, and I actually can navigate to and review that data. Now, here's the thing about integration IDTs. You can't manually just go type them in, okay? Because I need to know if I'm missing an integration IDT, well, where is this kid? I have to be able to find the student over in the general table or confirm that they've been enrolled in SIS to even be able to fix this. So we are going to talk about what you would do and how you would fix it. You'd run your report. First thing you want to do. You click on the profile link of the student, and it's going to take you to the student's profile. Now, this next part is a little odd. I admit it's a little bit odd, but I want to kind of get you to think this way. This record is not connected to anything because it doesn't have an integration IDT. So what I need to do is reconnect it with the record that's in SIS. And the best way to reconnect it is to just put a D in front of the student ID number. Remember, you're logged in as an admin, you can do that. And just think of it as a duplicate or kind of a dud. And by that, I mean that this isn't the real kid. The real kid's over in SIS. This is kind of my dud record. So I'm going to take this record, change that ID number so I can pull the correct kid in that is my kid that's enrolled in SIS. So I'm going to just edit the record, and I have another quick reference guide I'll pull up here in a second. Once I change that record to have a D in front of it, that helps me know that that's my student that I need to kind of merge together. The next thing I need to do is go over to the general table and search for that student and pull them in. And what had been going on in the past is that we taught people how to do this and they were doing it, but that student wasn't showing up, okay? So as they've been resolving these duplicates and cleaning up these IDs that were out there, we're seeing that they're actually starting to come through more and more. So you want to search for that student, and you want to search for him by his Alabama state ID number. And when you find him, you're going to import him in. And if you cannot find him, you have to reach out to your SIS team and verify that he is actively enrolled and that he no longer has a provisional ID. And where we have talked to our LEAs about this process, they're saying, yep, we've been doing that. Our SIS team is really good and they've been getting them in, and now we can import them in. Once you import them in, I now have 2 records. The last name and the first name match correctly. They're the same kid, although one has a D in front of their name. And once I have that, I can now merge them. So I can go over to my utilities, click Merge Student Profiles. It says, who do you want to merge? And you click you want to enter the correct ID of the state ID number. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take your dud record and you're going to merge it into the one that is part of SIS. Click here to merge the differences. It's going to merge all those documents. It's going to merge the profile differences, the things that you want to keep from the profile. It's going to match it up against this correct ID number. And now the dud or the duplicate in this process gets deleted, okay? Now, The reason we can't do this for you is because it really does require, in some cases, that you need to look at your data. We can't go in and make some determination about this. If when you start to run this report, if you have a lot of missing integration IDs, and when I say a lot, if you have over 10 of them, then please send an email to one of your application specialists. There is a utility that we can use to make them match, but I don't want to demonstrate using a mass replace utility unless we're doing one-on-one with you, okay? So if you only have a handful, it's a very, very straightforward process. If you have 10, I mean, I saw some districts who had 20 or more last week. I checked them today and they don't have any. So a lot of stuff's been remediated kind of in the back end. So remember, if you have a lot, let us know so that we can make sure that we can see about some methods of doing it that are, you know, not quite as, don't take quite as long. What I want to show you here is another handout. So these are the processes that we just went through, how to merge them. Step 1, enter that D in front of the name, import the newly enrolled student, merge the student profiles. There are screenshots. Make sure you merge the differences. When you merge the differences, it asks you what you want to merge. So let's think about this a second. By default, it knows that it probably should keep the target profile stuff. That's the stuff coming from SIS. But then you get down to the case manager, the evaluation, all of the profile information. Well, if you've updated that profile information on the dupe, you want to send it over. So you want to make sure that you are taking your source information and pushing it back over to the target profile. Okay, you just have to check the boxes. All right, so that's the merging the profiles in the quick reference, going along with the slide deck here. Something else we want to talk to you about now that we've got you with us, and that is really about deactivating students. When the migration was complete, you know, it was at the end of last year, moving into the beginning of this year. And they brought over, as I said, students who they thought, you know, were scheduled to be in school in the fall. There were also some students who had withdrawn in the spring. And many of those students came over as in an inactive status or with an exit date, or you even had some students who withdrew or even graduated. We had many discussions, the application specialists with all of you and with our teams, and we determined that, and even as I said, we talked to several LEAs about this, whether or not we should run some sort of a batch process that just deactivated them for you. And the determination was, especially after talking to many of you, was just teach us how to do it because we need to look at these records, okay? And so in the past few weeks, we have been working with many of you and shown you how to do this, but we're going to talk about this again. When you deactivate a student, it actually makes the student, it moves the student from quote unquote active, and I don't mean child count active, I just mean active in the software, to being deactivated. And it puts it over in the deactivated area so that when you get ready to do year-end rollover at the end of the year, it kind of moves it into the archives. So think of it as archiving a student. Now, that student doesn't go anywhere. That student's data is still there so that if you wanted to reactivate that student, it would automatically automatically make that student active, and all those documents and so forth and so on are accessible to you. You can deactivate any student on a one-by-one basis just by going to the student profile and clicking more and click Deactivate Profile. And in fact, when you've asked us, well, I have this student, he's not with us anymore, how do I get him off the caseload? And we said, oh, well, you can change the case manager to sets admin, or guess what? You can just deactivate him and it'll drop off at the caseload. So that's how you can do it for one student. But you might want to do it for other students as well. So I have given you some instructions for doing that, and the criteria based on what you're looking for, okay? So in order to deactivate, logging in, as your admin, you would go to Administration, Utilities, Student, Deactivate Profiles, okay? In the formula area, I've given you some examples, some different formats. If you're looking for pre-K kids, your enrollment start date would just be probably less than August 1st of this year. Okay, so withdrawn kids who've exited SPED, even if you were looking for graduates, okay? And this mass deactivate them. They get archived at the end of the year. You can always go back and retrieve them. Additional instructions are in here. I couldn't move my screen. Okay. Deactivating and archiving a single student, they become inactive. That's what they look like. To mass deactivate them, turning on the archive. I have another little blurb here about an admin telling you how to enable the archiving piece of it. Highly recommend that you do this. Gail, let me ask you a question. Is this an option that for archiving that could be set at the model level and have, so it's all set the same for everybody?
Let me see, what are you, I'm sorry, I was replying to a chat, so I'm a little bit behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We were talking about deactivating students, and right now the student profile is not set to automatically archive unless we turn it on. Is that something that we could push out into a future model release, assuming that everyone should be set the same?
I'm not sure because it's at the admin setting level. I'll have to look into it more.
Okay, just wondered. And it's no big rush because it really won't affect anybody till the end of the year. All right, so deactivating students. All right, this is another super important to do. We showed you how to set up security to reports in some of our report office hours, but we're going to take you back a little bit and remind you of this. And that is because there are in the child count reports that were pushed out after all of the default security had been set up, do not have the support or the security set up at the report level for some of your security groups, okay? So that means logged in as an admin, I'm gonna walk you through how to change this. We're gonna go to reports, standard reports, utilities, and set the report properties. We're gonna select security, and we're just gonna grant it to the appropriate groups. So watch me do this. All right. Okay, reporting standard reports. Set report properties. When you do that, it turns on three little dots. There's a state report for child count, and there's a state report for snapshots. Now, the rest of them have already had the security pre-configured because they were in the initial release when we set up all the default security. If we come over to the state report for child count, click on the two dots, click on security. Okay. Here's all of your default security groups. So remember, these reports allow you to do the Alabama validation warning reports, the student listing reports, the child counting reports. So my guess is the people that have access to that are only those folks at the top. So who would you want? District admin special programs, for sure. There is also down here a special education administrator. So depending on your security in your district, I can't advise you exactly who you might want to have this. I know a lot of you had security administrators system-wide. You gave that to a lot of people who actually are working on stuff like this, so you might want to change that one as well. Okay. This one typically might be a building level person, so I don't know. So remember, you're going to have to do this through the lens of how you may have altered your security. Okay. You just grant. And we're not using this one, are we? Gail, is there anything else I need to know about anybody?
No, we decided, yeah, we're not using that group. We put it in there at the time. We didn't know if we would or not. So we aren't right now at this point.
Okay. All right. And I'm just going to look at the state reporting snapshots. I just want to make sure and verify that they're there. So district admin, security administrator, system-wide. That's all I want. I'm good to go there. Managing report security. Here it is. Security. Change it to grant to whomever you would like to have it. Remember, this is just a reminder, if you want to give a particular report to a group of users, you can select the report, you're logged in as admin, click edit, and just open it up to whatever security group you want to change it to, okay? This is also the FAQ that has uploading and downloading the report definitions, just so you know where to look for that. All right, so now we're ready to go to the Alabama child count. All right, so Gail, this is where you're gonna help me, right? Be my buddy.
Absolutely, Kim. Everything for you.
Be my buddy. All right, Alabama child count includes special education students in school age programs PK 3 through 12, which is why they have to be enrolled, right? Who have a valid IEP on October 1st with an active status, and gifted students with an active status, all included in the October 1st submission. Everyone in Alabama is going to create a snapshot of their data on October 1st every year. and it gets submitted as part of the special education and gifted data collection. We're going to talk about the reports, which ones they're used, and how that data goes to PowerSchool SIS as part of the Alabama State Child Count export. All right, so starting with the validation process. Before submissions, review and correct student data by reviewing the child count validation reports by selecting the student profile link and correcting the source data. And by the source data, we mean the data that's located where, Gail?
In the SIS special education profile and the gifted profile.
Yay, yay. All right. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the reports and start to look at what these child count validation errors look like. Okay. Now, one of the columns that you don't see on this, and I think Gail will talk about it as well, but it was added to this report, which will be released on Friday, is one that says Integration Idt, because in addition to us giving you those reports right now so that you can find students that may not have an Integration Idt, that is also a warning issue that if they don't have an Integration Idt, they're not going to be included in the submission, and they have to be fixed because they don't have a record to go back to. So in the child count validation errors, we're going to go over to our state reporting folder. At this point in time, if you were logged in with your normal credentials, because you set the security up, you should have access to these reports. We are going to go to the child count validation and let's run an error report. Now, remember, my error report over here in Alabama demo probably isn't going to look very spectacular, is it?
This report also has what the most recent will be when you get it on the 24th too.
Oh, it does, because you changed it over here. Cool.
I put all the changes in demo for us to look at.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right, so we're going to go to the child count validation error. Okay, ID, last name, first name, school, blank. Well, I don't see it. Should I not be seeing it here? Oh, put it at the end. Okay. 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 So when we talk about correcting source data, okay, the way that you correct source data in special programs is actually pretty easy. Here's your record right here. Because our reports are live, you can go directly to the source data by clicking on the link. And then navigating to any of the areas to fix it. Now let me go back, and then when I come back up, I click on the report and it takes me back. So let's walk through this again. Okay. Blank exceptionality. I come over here. I go over to special education. I would be able to edit, fix my exceptionality. Go directly back to the report, guys. And when I click refresh, see how it'll make the X go away. Now, obviously, I have a lot of errors here that Gail was so gracious to make me fix. But if you're going through the data process, you can just stay on this report and refresh. And as the data gets refreshed, it'll drop off the warning errors. Okay. So you've got and at this point, because Gail, anything in particular that you want to say about here? You know, we've had some folks talk about invalid race codes, but that's coming over from SIS. So do we have Do we have any idea about that at the moment, or is that?
Yeah, that's coming over from the SIS. You got to remember we're in that Apple Grove play data, so a lot of our data is missing stuff. But yeah, if you have an invalid race code, we were pulling it from the federally reported race, and we just found out the other day that we're going to make a change to pull that. So in the release on that Friday, it should clear up a lot of those race code errors. We worked with Dennis's team for integration to see that we're pulling the correct data over. One other thing I want to add on here too is the invalid or missing state ID. In yours, it will probably say missing state ID, and we were only looking for blank state IDs. We added additional criteria to the invalid state ID. If you go to the top next to the arrow next to the validations, it tells you what we're looking at, Kim. And we are looking at, and this will be fixed, we'll push it out, but it's going to be looking at state ID numbers to be between 1 million or 1 billion, whatever that number is at the top, and 29999999999. We had something that we discovered this morning, so that one will be fixed for the 2999. So those are valid state ID numbers that are acceptable. So if you went in and like Kim was saying earlier, and created some records and made up a state ID number, you're going to probably see when this is run on, well, hopefully you'll use the report definitions to clean them all up, so you won't see many on your validation report. But when we release this on Friday, you will probably see some additional SSID number errors if you did not clean up with the report definitions. Same with the Integration Idt. So those are the two changes that we made on this report for the upcoming release. All the other errors are still the same. They are in your current model.
All right, so child count errors, the important things to remember about that, other than Gail's comments, is remember, you can go directly to the profiles, navigate to the profiles themselves, either special education, gifted, make the change in the source data, go back to the report, click refresh, making all those changes in the source data.
Now, let me add one more thing, because Kim's going to go on to this report next. As you correct all the errors, all the X's in your validation report, and you click refresh, and that student comes completely off this list, they go immediately onto the student listing, child count student listing report. Very similar to what you did in your SETS program.
So from here to here.
And you will have to click the refresh button again too. We don't have any on here today, but we will.
That's a little sad. So,
I know,
yeah.
I thought you were just doing the slides, so I didn't put
That's
data
okay.
in.
That's all right.
But I can do that real quick.
Yeah, I probably do have a slide that I have put some data on. So here we go. Okay, so child count student listing. They go directly here. Now, is there any nuance? So even here, if you're correcting or changing things here, you're still changing it at the source data. But at this point in time, the data is correct. So, you know, under what circumstances would you really even be editing this scale?
Sorry, I'm multitasking. Trying to set some data for you, and you caught me off guard. So at the student listing, The only time you really would be changing any of the data here is if you're reviewing it and you say, oh, gosh, I put the wrong LRE on this student.
Okay.
Or something, yeah, I mean, you're reviewing the data and it has the wrong information on it. So that's the only really time that you would do that. Most of your changes are going to be made in your error report, and it brings the student record over here.
So once your error log is clear, you review your child count student listing report, then you're really ready for your snapshot, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Once you review all of that, you really want to make sure you get all those errors corrected, and that's why Kim went through the first steps this morning to help you clean up some of that data prior to reviewing that data.
So how do you take the snapshot? You have to take it on October 1st. There is a window of time during which you can submit it. You all are familiar to this. Changes to the snapshot can only be made during that designated submission window. So how do I do it? A couple things to know about just how the Alabama model works. When you take the snapshot, it also creates a child profile. So what's a child profile? For every student, there's a profile that's called Child Count Snapshot. And in that Child Count Snapshot, it creates a record of that point in time for that student. All right, before we actually take the snapshot, a couple things just to be aware of. You all should remember where the global profile was. We talked about it the first time we ever met with you. We talked about it on the last time we met with you and said, you got to make sure these dates are correct. There is one more field that has been added that's coming out next week. So just a reminder here, you want to verify that the first day and the last day of the current school year are correct. You want to make sure that your federal count date is correct. Oh, you sent me a screenshot with the wrong count date, Gail. Oh, that's because you must have been testing things.
That was our testing this weekend.
Yeah. How funny. All right. So that really should say 10-1, everybody, right? And then we added a snapshot approval status and a snapshot date so that you can verify the dates the snapshot was taken, right? So normally for the rest of you, this should say 10-1.
Yeah, and we'll get that corrected screenshot.
Well, this is just demo. I hate to put a wrong date in the slide deck because somebody will not read it correctly.
Right.
And remember, this is going to be an annual thing. You have to always verify your dates every year. Okay.
So let me add a couple things to this before you go off the screen.
Okay.
We did put a couple validations in here for this next release for that federal count date and creating the snapshot. If for some reason somebody went in and created the snapshot by mistake today, it can be removed before the date that's in your federal count date, but it cannot be removed anytime as of that date or after. So you're going to take that snapshot one time. Okay, so that's important to know too.
Right. All right, creating the snapshot. So now we're going to move into the state reporting snapshot report folder area. Okay, so we are actually going to go down to and launch the child count snapshot. It's not going to have any data in it. We're going to populate it. And once you populate it, that is the snapshot. Do not do this again. What does that look like? State reporting snapshots. Child count snapshot. And you've already done this once. So there's going to be a button there that says populate. It's going to build this. Whatever is on this report should match what? The validation student listing, right?
That's correct.
Correct. Right. Other important things to know about this, Gail. I'm gonna ask you to comment. I just took things off of your sheet. So if you have something you want to add, let me know. Is this something they will be doing or not?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, they would. So suppose you take your snapshot on October 1 and then you go back and review the errors and you didn't get all your errors fixed because, you know, we got a lot of data cleanup going on right now, right? And so you can go back and make that changes to that to correct those errors in your snapshot before you submit it, like you have in the past. And what you're going to do is if it's demographic data, you're going to get it cleaned up in the SIS, fix it in the SIS, and the integration will come over and it'll correct those errors. Say you had to fix anything in the special ed or gifted profiles, you will make those corrections there. And then the next step is to go to the state reporting profiles, which is also under all your profiles. And when you scroll to the very bottom, you're going to see the child count section because all the data on your student listing report is coming from it's feeding from your special ed profile, gifted profile to the state reporting profile, and that's where we pick up the data. So there's going to be a button down there, and there'll be information at the top and it says, okay, you've either satisfied the data or you have not satisfied the data. That's that blue message at the top. If all the criteria is identified and correct on that student record, there will be a button on the screen, and you also have to have the correct security rights to see that button, and you can click that, and it will add that to your, it'll create the child profile that Kim talked about for the snapshot, and add that student to the snapshot, and the validations, because you correct them, will come off the validation error report. So that's how you'll be adding that to that. If you go to, we did put a message too also on the report. So if you were to click the little pencil next to the report and you click accept, it'll bring up an error message that tells you that you have to go to these same places that we just talked about right here to change the record. So those will all be in your release this Friday.
I'm trying to find that screenshot. This is, oh, you said there'll be a little pencil right here next to it?
Once they take the snapshot, if they click on any of those profile icons,
Okay.
Yeah, that it'll bring a message up and tell them where to go to do that. I'm trying to set up some data so I can show y'all. So I'm going to let you continue, Kim, till I can set that up.
Okay. So, well, the same thing. Here's the pencil. See, here's the edit. Here's the remove.
No, that's not where they would. This is not where they would do it. On the report itself. Yeah, on the report itself.
Okay. Yeah. So all I have is that, and then for editing that.
Yeah, let me get a student. If you give me just a second to get a student on that listing, I'll show you. I'm just trying to do that for you. I don't know where all this demo data went. I mean, it was there before. Okay, almost done. Hold on just 1 second. This data is pretty old in here. Okay, might be there. I have one student on the report now. Do you want to show that, Kim?
Okay. Okay, so,
Go to the student listing report and refresh. You should see it.
okay,
Go to that report first,
sorry.
and then that student should be on just to follow through what we talked about. Okay, so there's the student on here, and then if we go to the snapshot, we'll have to remove that snapshot. So you might want to show them how. Let me do that. Hold on. Since we don't want to show, well, geez. And also too, the date in globals was not set right on this data set, so
Oh, now it is.
I had, yeah. And now you should see a lot more students too, I think.
Okay, now go down
Well,
to, I'll count
hold on.
snapshot.
Okay, so now you should see the snapshot with the one child on there.
So go ahead and populate it.
I already did. Just refresh your screen.
Oh. Okay.
So now Julie Adams is on here. I corrected all her errors. And if you click on the pencil next to her name on the snapshot, this is what we wanted to make sure you're clear on. If you see that none of these fields are editable, can you make that a little bit bigger, Kim? Stretch it out a little bit. There you go. So this is showing you that the snapshot was taken at the bottom. It's showing it was taken on 9/20 for today, right? But you would have it on October 1. But you notice none of these are editable. So if I was to click accept changes here, because none of these fields are editable, there's a message at the top that'll tell you where to go and fix the data. So if you had to fix any of the data in the snapshot and you get confused and select it here, this is where you would go. It's the same instructions that Kim gave you in the slide. So the changes are going to be made in the SIS for the demographic data. They're made in special ed and gifted profiles for those data fields. And then to add a student to the snapshot, you would go to the reporting profile if you needed to make any changes and add that. So for this particular student, let's show them how to do that. Let's go and change Julie Adams. We'll go to the search for Julie Adams, and we're going to change her. Well, let's not change the exceptionality. Let's just change. Let's change your exceptionality from gifted to maybe she disqualified for SLD or something, and we wanted to change that information.
Okay, this is the problem I ran into in the demo data. I don't know.
Let me look. Let me look. I can.
Yeah. 1432.
Her SSID number, yeah, that's not showing that. So let me look and see.
I think so. It's the last one I was in, 1432.
Yeah.
And then what am I changing?
Change her exceptionality from gifted to SLD. And then add the, also add the LRE, because that'll show up as an error. But I want to show you how it's going to show up as an error first. So I changed it to SLD. I accepted the changes. Don't change LRE yet. And then when I go to the state reporting section, profile and section, and I scroll to the bottom, it'll tell me that she's got an exception for LRE, I think. So it changed it there. If you scroll up just a little bit, it's going to tell you that, oh, how did she get not active status? We must have done something there. And then the blank LRE. So this is giving you a little message to say, okay, before you can add the student to your snapshot, you're going to have to fix these records. So let's go back to the the special ed profile so that we can fix those items, and then then the button will show up.
Will it let me change that?
Yeah, wait, you still got LRE to add to.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if that would work. Okay, LRE. Is that on?
It's up a little bit. It's in the special ed. Yeah, it's that big long one. You go down a little bit.
Oh, here's special ed right here.
Right, I go down just a little bit, and it's right there. Well, no. Keep going a little bit more. It'd be in the. Keep going a little bit further. I saw it. Yeah, I saw it already. So there we go. It's right there, the last field. There's none. Just pick one. No, you can't pick that one. Pick one or two. She'll get another error. All right, now we're ready to accept it. And then go to state reporting profile. All right, and so then when you go down to that section, you see where it says you can update all the data. There's the little blue comments are gone, and it'll allow you to update the reporting snapshot. This is very similar to what you did in your sets program. In your sets in your folder, you had the snapshot button where you could go and make changes. This is just helping you a little bit more because in your sets, you had to make the changes in two places, right? You had to make it in the folder data and in the snapshot. So this is actually allowing you to create it in kind of the folder when you do it in the profile. And then when you click the button, it's adding it to the snapshot. So you're taking it, correcting it one time for two places. So a little bit more streamlined. Even though it doesn't seem like it, since Kim and I are working this data the same. Sorry about that. I didn't have time this morning to set up the demo site.
And then if I refresh it.
Yep, you'll see the
Okay.
LRE and accepting.
Great. All right. All right. All right, so now we're ready to approve. You ready to approve?
Yeah, and you guys will have all, I mean, you guys are, one thing you'll want to do is your student listing has a count. Sometimes you have to, because you got a lot more kids than we have this one in our demo. So you might want to, you'll have to scroll all the way over to the right to see the count. So make sure your student counts match your snapshot count, match your export counts. So that's one thing you want to make sure all the way through that those counts match. They should, but just to verify, it's a way to validate your data. Okay, next step. Sorry, Kim.
Oh, that's okay. All right, so we're on the approval process. You've completed the review, you've corrected any changes, you're finally ready for that final approval submission. Once you approve it, all of the data that is part of the child count submission snapshot gets pushed over into an export, and that export runs and populates SIS. So how do you approve the snapshot? complete all of the data entry. You're going to go to your child count snapshot. And you will have an approved reporting snapshot here. And when you click on it, and I can't click on that yet, can I?
Fine. Oh, it's not letting you because it's not October 1 yet.
Yeah. So
That's why we had changed the date on that previous screen.
that's all right. So I approve this.
That
And
was an added thing that we added so that they couldn't approve the snapshot until they've taken until it's October 1, so they can't approve it before October 1.
yeah. So it's grayed out. So and approve it, Tom.
For demonstration's sake, well, let me do something in the background so you don't have to show everybody that, just so that we can do it. I'm just changing the globals so you can change, so you can do it. If you go and refresh your screen, you might be able to do it now, Kim.
Here we go. Approve reporting snapshot. Are you certain you want to proceed? Once approved, the snapshot can no longer be edited. Okay, it's approved. If I come over to my standard reports, there are some reports that are called,
It's at the top. Yeah, the export. Mm-hmm.
and normally, you know, these, I would say that normally most people don't look at these, but it's this one right here that is populated, and that is what sends the data back to SIS. It exports the child count data to SIS.
So this is kind of like your review, you had a preview and a review. This is your review data. This is what got sent to the state. It gets sent to the SIS, and the SIS sends it to the state.
And that transparently, magically goes back to the state. All right.
And one thing I don't think we mentioned some things on, like, and I believe services worked with you all to set up your globals. So when Kim was showing your globals, your first and ending last day of school is important too, to make sure that they're correct. I don't know if we talked too much about that, but that's used for some of your errors and stuff on your report. So make sure your first and last day of schools are correct too. Okay. Yeah. And like Kim said, your federal count date will be 10/1/2021. For purposes of our demonstration today, we had to change that because it's not yet October 1.
All right, so just a couple of things as a reminder. Clear your validation errors. Your child count student listing should match the child count snapshot, and your child count snapshot should match the export submission. Over here, even though I included everything, here are all of your quick reference dots, okay? We talked about the exports. What's next over here? And I'm going to stop now because we have a lot of questions. I don't know that we'll get through them all. Christine, have you been writing them down? I do want to stop and open it up to us reading some of these. I think
Yeah,
that,
I mean, a lot of them weren't really questions that
okay.
you need, you know, a lot of them were just, can you repeat this? Can you repeat that? Which I put either handouts or repetitions on there.
I got it. Anything in here? I'm kind of looking through.
I just posted one at the very end there that I think I have 2 student profiles that are not merging with their database. It acts like it is working, but when refreshed, it still shows not linked to the SIS profile.
Yeah, and unfortunately, guys, because we're all together, I can't open up anybody's database and look at any PII data, right? So if you want to, and if you're doing something with us and if you want us to look at something, we have to have an ID. Not a student name, but an ID, and we can't look at it with you all together because of I can't download the data cleanup definition for child count. Mine is the same. It is trying to pull up a notebook and will not work. Mine is the same. Okay, let's
I gave instructions for that too, Kim.
Oh, you guys are ahead of me.
Yeah, I gave instructions for that.
Okay, and it worked for Lynette. Thank you. Right. I would rather you guys try to do the definitions before, but yeah, and just do you want me to walk through doing that really quick again? When you when she sends you the instructions, just don't open them, just attach them when you upload them. You should be fine. Last but not least, you know, a couple things that we want to remind you of. This team is going to be focused this week on doing nothing but office hour sessions and some follow-ups thereafter. As I said, Alicia, Christine, if you know, we won't be able to reach out one-on-one to work with you, but send us an email. We'll try to get, you know, right back to the email if possible. It's also important to remember that if you've got, you know, more than 10 integration Idts that you're struggling with, let us know. Okay, let us know. We want to make sure that you have the help that you need to be able to move through those. We also want to make sure that you know that customer support is collaborating with us on this efforts and hearing the same information that we are sending you, and is committed to making sure that they are there to support you. If you have not signed up for your support account, let us know that as well. We'll get Dana and we'll get somebody to reach out to you to make sure that you're doing things the right way. So I want to encourage you to reach out, ask questions, and just be a little patient. We don't have a lot of bandwidth to schedule individual appointments, but we will be working with all of you as best we can through these office hour sessions this week. So we're running 2 a day. If you want to register for more than one, you certainly can. We have this one recorded, and we're going to make this recording available through the office hour link that we always provide. So as soon as we get off the phone today, the office hour link that is right here will have the link associated to the recording, the slide deck, any other notes and things that were asked of us today in this session. Gail, anything else in closing?
Yeah, I just like to say, fixing your errors and reviewing your student listing report is really not that different than what you did in your SETS program. So focus on that for now, and some of the material that Kim has given you to correct the records that do not have a integration IDT, so that you're not surprised when that gets rolled out, that when the release gets rolled out and you see that new error on your validation report. So if you work on that throughout this week and the provisional IDs, that'll eliminate you working your validation and error reports this week and then going back after the release. So I encourage you all next Monday to make sure that you're running your validation report again to make sure that you didn't miss any of those, because you're going to have those new validations there. So so make sure you look at that report again. You may have fixed all your errors, and we put those two new validations on there for the length of the state ID number and for the integration IDT. So you don't have any surprises.
Yeah, just a couple of other things. We get this a lot, and so Gail, I want you to talk about this a little bit. When I think people think that when you release new updates, that it affects things adversely that are already open. So we get questions about that all the time. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that releases don't adversely affect any documents in progress.
Not unless we retire a document completely. And yeah, this question did come to me, just so I do want to pass that out. There was a couple documents that y'all weren't able to finalize. One is because of the field being required for first attempt on a couple documents, and some preschool information on your IEP for non-EI students. All that, you don't have to create new documents for that. Someone posed that question to me, that they had to create new documents, but you don't. Those documents weren't retired in any way. They weren't reversioned. And so you should be able to go back into those documents, and those fields have been corrected, so that you should be able to finalize those documents. So thanks for bringing that up, Kim. I did want to point that out too.
No, I just was reading the messages we were getting. So I just want to make sure. Couple other things. This is the other question. Just so you know, the report definitions, there's only one file, guys. And that's because when you install that report definition, it contains 4 reports. Okay. So I just bundled them all together. Don't be looking for more than one. You just need to do the one, and it'll explode into 4 reports.
And the difference is going to be, Kim's putting him, told you to create a definition, right? A category for those definitions. And that's where all those reports will go when you create that category. The one that Kim also asked us, for anybody that didn't join these sessions, to add the reports to the model. So that there was somebody that did not join one of these sessions, so they had the same material for those report definitions. That's why we added it to the model. So the only difference you're going to see is you're going to see it in the same report in 2 places if you download the definitions here. You'll see it under diagnostic reports in whatever category you put it under. Any other questions about child counts that we can answer for you? I did see one that says, can you say one more time about the counts? Just like you did before in the past, you just want to make sure your counts are the same. So if you're running the student listing report, because that's where you should be working all year long, student listing and validation reports, right? So once you work those all year long, if you're going to see a count on there, it's going to be over to the right. If you all have to scroll over to the right, and you'll see the count for the data, or on your last page. and make sure that that same number of students is on your other report. So that's for your validations. That's how many validations have to be cleaned out. Hopefully yours isn't that big. I don't think I've seen any that were that big, but our demo data doesn't have a lot of data in it for that. So, but so you'll see on your student listing, you'll see your count. And so you want to make sure your counts match for your student listing. It should be the same. And we have a total report. The total is just the breakdown of just
Yeah.
all that is just a count of how many disabilities and how many gifted. That's all it is.
So I
It doesn't
will
look
say,
like-
though, just because you said it to me, this is a lot. And you know what? This is a live database because you can say I blanked the kids out. And the point for that is that this is because this database has so many kids that need to be withdrawn. So make sure you're getting those kids deactivated because that number will drastically come down when you get these withdrawn kids out of there. Okay. So just a reminder about how important that is.
And then the third count, let me just add that the third count is once you've done your snapshot and then your export when it's approved. Just make sure the count in your export report matches what was in your snapshot.
Yeah. All right, so just a couple things. I added a couple things back into the chat for you, where a couple of you have said, I just can't make this work and it's not working for me. Remember, if you want to ask us, send us an email. Very specific about the student ID number and what you're trying to do, and we'll reach out. No names, just ID numbers and your district. We're trying to keep this all your student information data out of our emails because that's a violation of privacy. So just if you just give us the IDs, then we can actually take a look and see what does the LEA do if the child count total and the child count student listing count doesn't match. And that's from Eric Gale.
Eric, if you're looking at something in one of the play sites right now, it'll be corrected in the release.
Okay, thanks, Dale.
All right, everybody, I think we're going to drop. We'll get this posted out there so you all have access to it. And then we'll be doing another session this afternoon.